Have you ever stopped to think about what really holds a government in check? You'd probably assume it's all written down in black and white, as laws. But what if I told you that one of the most powerful rules in the entire UK Constitution, the one that can literally end a minister's career, isn't actually a law at all? Yeah, let's dig into this unwritten rule of power.
And that really is the heart of the matter, isn't it? If there's no law you can point to, no judge you can go to, how on earth does the system actually work? Well, it all hinges on this really fascinating and, frankly, powerful concept right at the core of the British Constitution.
And here it is. It's called a constitutional convention. The best way to think about these is as the gentlemen's agreements of government. They are the unwritten rules of the game. They're not laws, so a court can't enforce them, but, and this is a big but, they are absolutely considered binding. If you break one, you're looking at huge political fallout, accusations of acting unconstitutionally, and it can be a career ender.
Now, of all these unwritten rules, there's one that really stands head and shoulders above the rest. It's probably the most important one for making sure the government is actually answerable to the people. And that, of course, is the Convention of Ministerial Responsibility.
So what is it really? At its core, this convention means one simple thing. Every single government minister, right up to the Prime Minister, has to answer to the elected members of Parliament for everything they do and for everything their entire department does. It's the essential link that connects the government back to the people's representatives.
Okay, so what does this duty actually look like in practice? It's not just one thing. It's really a whole bundle of obligations that are, and I'm not exaggerating, absolutely critical for a functioning democracy. So let's break it all down.
First things first, we've got to get our heads around two key ideas that sound similar but are very different: accountability and responsibility. So accountability is the what and why. It's the process. It's the minister having to show up to Parliament, answer tough questions, give information, and basically explain themselves. Responsibility, on the other hand, well, that's the consequence. That's what happens when things go wrong. And the ultimate consequence? Resignation.
And this is where it gets really interesting. This convention actually has two distinct forms. First, you've got individual responsibility. That means a specific minister is on the hook for their own personal behavior and for any major mess-ups in their department. But then you've got this other thing, collective responsibility. This is the all-for-one, one-for-all principle. The idea is that the government acts as a single team. Once cabinet makes a decision, every single minister has to publicly defend it, even if they hate it or they have to resign. This is absolutely vital for having a stable, unified government.
And this quote, this is about as close as we get to seeing the rule written down. It's right there in the Ministerial Code. The duty not to knowingly mislead Parliament is the absolute bedrock of this entire system. Think about it. If Parliament can't trust the information it's getting from the government, then it can't do its job. The whole accountability thing just falls apart.
So, this brings us to the really sharp end of ministerial responsibility: resignation. In theory, it's the ultimate punishment for a major failure. But what happens when this tidy constitutional theory crashes into the messy, unpredictable world of real-life politics? Well, that's when things get complicated.
And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The code says ministers are expected to offer their resignation. Expected to. But is it automatic? Does breaking this rule mean you're definitely out? The reality is, well, it's a lot fuzzier than a simple rulebook might suggest.
And this just lays it all out perfectly. You can see the gap between the constitutional ideal and the political reality. Ideally, a minister resigns over a huge policy disaster where they misled Parliament. But in the real world, resignations are often triggered by other things entirely. Personal misconduct, scandals about money or sex is a huge one, mainly because it's a clear-cut issue that makes a minister a political headache. But honestly, it often just comes down to raw politics. Has the minister become too unpopular? Have they lost the media? And, maybe most importantly, have they lost the support of the Prime Minister?
To really see how this works, or, maybe doesn't work, in the real world, let's look at one of the most famous and controversial tests this convention has ever faced: the Arms to Iraq affair.
So here's what went down. The government secretly relaxed its own rules on selling military-related gear to Iraq. Parliament was kept completely in the dark about this massive policy change. A huge official inquiry, the Scott Report, later confirmed that yes, Parliament had been misled. So the ultimate sanction, right? Resignations all around? Nope. Not a single minister resigned. The government at the time was strong enough to just ride out the storm. This case became the textbook example of how this powerful convention can kind of melt away if a government is determined enough to stick together.
So, cases like the Arms to Iraq affair naturally lead to a huge debate. If this convention is so important, but it can be dodged when it's politically convenient, should we just give up on the unwritten part and turn it into an actual, legally enforceable law?
It's a really tempting idea, isn't it? Let's take this crucial rule out of the murky gray area of politics and stick it firmly in the black and white world of law, where judges could actually step in. But, as you can imagine, there are some pretty powerful arguments on both sides of this.
Okay, so let's weigh the pros and cons. The big pro is obvious. A law would create legal certainty. The rules would be clear, and courts could enforce them. Simple. But the con side is pretty hefty. For starters, can you imagine the arguments over how to define the precise rules? Trying to write a law that covers every possible political situation would be a nightmare. And a lot of experts argue that even if you did, new unwritten conventions would just pop up around the law anyway, to handle all the political stuff the law couldn't cover.
So, whether it stays a convention or it one day becomes a law, we have to understand why this thing matters so much. It's not just some random rule floating around on its own, it is the absolute linchpin that holds several other massive constitutional principles together.
And you can see how it all connects, like a chain reaction. Step 1, ministers, who are the executive, have to answer to Parliament, the legislature. Step 2, this constant questioning and scrutiny is what makes the idea of parliamentary sovereignty, that Parliament is the highest power in the land, actually means something. And step 3, by creating that powerful check on the government, it helps maintain the crucial separation of powers. It's all connected.
When you boil it all down, it comes to this. Without ministerial responsibility, the government could basically do whatever it wants without ever having to explain itself to the people who put it there. It is the vital, if sometimes wobbly, chain that connects power back to the people.
And that really brings us right back to the core dilemma. The great strength of this unwritten rule has always been its flexibility, its ability to adapt to messy political situations. But its great weakness is that it relies almost entirely on the personal honor of politicians and the political will of the prime minister to actually enforce it. So the ultimate question for all of us is, in today's intense political world, is a system built on unwritten rules still strong enough to do its job?